Paul drew the dare, kiss the person you like for 2 minutes. Amidst the cheers of our friends, he got up and walked towards me. At that time, we were in a Cold War, and I was nervous and shy, closing my eyes in confusion. Paul Bailey, however, leaned down and chuckled into my ear. "Want me to kiss you, Celia?" "Unlucky, I'm already tired of you." After saying that, he turned around and kissed the pretty junior. At that moment, I suddenly didn't want him anymore. The next day, I applied to a college abroad and accepted the marriage arranged by my elders. On his birthday, I left for a foreign country without looking back. When the plane landed, my phone blew up with his calls. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. When Paul drew the dare, he was already a bit tipsy. A mischievous friend picked up the slip of paper and read it out loud on purpose. "Kiss the person you like for 2 minutes." Everyone immediately looked at me and started cheering. Tonight's gathering was specially organized by Paul. Paul and I had been in a Cold War for over a month. In previous arguments, I always endured grievances and took the initiative to make peace with him. But this time, I somehow became stubborn. I just wouldn't give in. Originally, I thought we would continue to be at a stalemate. But unexpectedly, Paul called me today. I was a bit nervous, my fingers unconsciously gripping the hem of my skirt tightly. And Paul had already stood up. Several familiar girls beside me were smiling and gently pushing me. "Celia, your boyfriend is coming to kiss you." A secret joy sprouted in my heart, and I looked up at Paul. He was wearing the white shirt I liked, with a slightly messy collar. Under the influence of wine, his eyes looked particularly affectionate as he gazed at me. My cheeks heated up, and I lowered my eyes, my fingers gripping tighter. My palms were already covered in a fine layer of sweat. When I looked up again, Paul was already standing in front of me. "Celia." He bent down. His voice, tinged with drunkenness, sounded especially gentle. I was so nervous I didn't know what to do, and my shyness was overwhelming. When he leaned down to kiss me, I closed my eyes in a panic. But the expected kiss never came. Instead, his slightly hot breaths fell on my ear, accompanied by a low chuckle. "You want me to kiss you, huh? I haven't touched you for a month, and you're already so desperate, Celia?" I suddenly opened my eyes. Paul had already straightened up. A mocking smile played on his thin lips. Looking down at me, his eyes were filled with only coldness and disdain. At that moment, I felt all the blood rush to my head. My hands and feet were cold and trembling. I sat there stiffly, staring blankly as he turned and walked away. In the stunned silence of the room, he took the hand of that pretty junior. "Is that okay?" I knew that Junior had always admired him. She had shown her feelings for him countless times, openly and secretly. When I was jealous before, he casually said he wasn't interested in her. But now, after she shyly nodded, he didn't hesitate to lean down and kiss her. For 2 minutes, not a second less. When the kiss ended, he even raised his hand, gently rubbing the junior's slightly swollen lips, wiping away the ambiguous moisture from the corner of her mouth. The girls sitting next to me all looked at me with sadness and sympathy. Paul glanced at me indifferently. He returned to his seat and picked up a bottle of wine. "Why is it so quiet?" "This is quite interesting, let's keep playing." Someone quickly tried to smooth things over. "Paul, you shouldn't drink anymore, look how drunk you are." "Yeah, Paul, Celia is about to cry, you should comfort her." He leaned back in his chair, looking relaxed. "Why should I comfort her? She is your girlfriend after all, you went too far just now." "Who said she was my girlfriend?" The mocking smile on Paul's lips grew even colder. "Didn't we break up a month ago?" I lowered my eyes and couldn't help but chuckle softly. I got up and walked towards Paul, then slapped him across the face with his playful smile still on. Watching his face gradually darken, I said word by word, "Yes, now, we are breaking up. I wish Mr. Bailey and his new girlfriend have fun tonight." I turned and walked out. I heard the junior's sweet voice. "Why is she so angry?" "Who cares?" Paul asked someone to open another bottle. "Let's keep drinking." "Paul, Celia seems really angry this time." I didn't stop, directly opening the door. Paul's lazy voice came through. What does it have to do with me? When was she ever not really angry? In the end, doesn't she always come back begging to reconcile? Do you still want to reconcile with her? The tightly closed door blocked out all the noise. I didn't hear his answer. But it didn't matter to me anymore. Previously, because I was in a relationship with Paul Bailey, I chose to stay in the country for my postgraduate studies. But now, going abroad for college seems quite nice too. I took some time to clean out everything I had left in Paul's apartment and brought it back to my dormitory. I haven't told anyone about studying abroad yet. Life started to get busy, there were so many things I needed to prepare. Gradually, I thought less and less about Paul. Until that day when I returned to the dormitory building after dinner. I ran into Paul and his new girlfriend. The girl was clinging to his neck, occasionally standing on tiptoe to ask for a kiss. But the expression on Paul's face seemed somewhat impatient. I walked past without looking sideways, just about to enter the dormitory door. Paul suddenly called out to me, "Celia." I paused for a moment but didn't stop. He called out again, "Celia, I'm calling you. Didn't you hear?" He pushed the girl in front of him aside and walked directly to me. "What's up?" I looked at him calmly. "There's something." "Okay, go ahead." His girlfriend followed, clinging to him, glaring at me with hostility. "The cake you always bought for me before, where was it from?" He lazily put his arm around his girlfriend, looking down at me. "My girlfriend also likes cake a lot, I want to buy it for her. I made it myself." He frowned. "How about this, you make 2 for me?" "Of course, I'll pay you." I smiled. "Sorry, I don't need money, and money isn't everything. Also, please stay away from me, I don't want to see you again." He looked at me with a half smile. "Are you jealous?" I suddenly felt it was all too meaningless. I didn't want to argue or waste my breath on these trivial matters. "Think whatever you want." I walked around him and quickly entered the dormitory building. As soon as I got in, my roommate pulled me to the window. Downstairs, it seemed like Paul and his new girlfriend were arguing. After a while, he impatiently shook off the girl's hand and drove away. The girl stood downstairs crying for a while before leaving dejectedly. My roommate seemed to enjoy the drama. "Celia, I think Paul still likes you. Is he doing this on purpose to provoke you, hoping you'll give in first?" I laughed and poked my roommate's forehead. "Stop reading those domineering CEO novels, they're rotting your brain." Because I liked Paul, I had previously refused the marriage arrangement set up by my elders. Now that they know I am going abroad, they brought up the old matter again. "Uncle, can I think about it again?" "All right, you still want to continue your studies now, there's no rush for marriage. But before you go abroad, you should at least meet him. You have to like him, after all." "Okay." I didn't reject their kindness any further. My 2 uncles have always loved me dearly. After my mother passed away and my father remarried, they became the people who love me most in this world. In the evening, I arranged to have dinner with my best friend. I also told her about my plans to study abroad. While I was in the restroom, Paul called me. "Celia, where are your things?" I took them back to the dorm. His voice was emotionless. "Since you've moved out, take everything with you. My girlfriend is coming over tonight, and she won't be happy to see your stuff. Just throw them away." "Fine, but don't regret it later." The call ended. I stared at my bewildered self in the mirror. I couldn't understand what he meant. I don't even want him anymore, why would I care about the things he gave me? I agreed to my uncle's request to meet the person before going abroad. But I never expected that the person who showed up would be him. My best friend was also stunned, grabbing my hand and whispering excitedly. "Celia, your blind date is Otis Weston." I instinctively sat up straight, my face slightly flushed. I didn't know it was him. "I can't take it, Celia, I'm scared, I need to escape to the restroom." After saying that, my best friend let go of my hand. Otis Weston hadn't even approached yet, and she already stood up quickly. "Mr. Otis, I need to go to the restroom first." After saying that, she obediently bowed. But after a few steps, she dashed away like a rabbit and disappeared. Uncle Otis. He was my uncle's cooperation partner and the big shot of the city. I greeted him softly, suddenly feeling too timid to look directly at him as I used to. He sat across from me. What do you want to eat? Anything is fine, I'm not picky. He ordered a few dishes and asked me, is this okay? I glanced at the menu, they were all my favorite dishes. I was a bit surprised and couldn't help but look at him. The man who always seemed noble and aloof in my memory was dressed more casually today, making him seem less intimidating. But I was still a bit reserved and responded softly, it's fine. After the waiter took the menu and left, he suddenly spoke, Celia, are you very afraid of me? I instinctively nodded, then hurriedly shook my head. Whenever I saw him in the past, it was always from a distance while following my uncles. Occasionally, when the elders talked, I just stood quietly by the side and never interrupted. He wasn't much older, just held a higher status. In fact, he was only 27 this year. So, what do you think of me? I was a bit stunned. He smiled, don't be nervous, you can think about it before answering. I took a deep breath, Uncle Otis. Celia, you can call me by my name. I tightly clenched my palm, and after a while, I softly called out, Otis. I still want to study abroad, at least for 2 years. It's okay, if you are willing, we can get engaged first. Why? I was a bit puzzled. He had so many options for marriage. And I was just an orphan with a deceased mother and a remarried father, a girl with a family that felt like no family at all. Otis handed me a glass of juice he had poured. His fingers were long and strong, pressed against the glass, looking like jade. I found myself staring in a daze. He put down the glass and gently patted my head. Celia, I don't want to scare you. So, let's keep it a secret for now. 3 days before going abroad, Otis and I quietly got engaged. The day before going abroad, Paul suddenly called me. Celia, tomorrow is my birthday. I was packing my suitcase and responded perfunctorily, You know the place. His tone still carried a bit of laziness. The step is there for you, come down or not, it's up to you. Before I could react, the phone was hung up. My uncle came over and knocked on the door, Celia, Mr. Weston is here to take you to dinner. I quickly responded and closed my suitcase. That call from Paul was already forgotten. Because of the long flight the next day, Otis didn't keep me out too late. He had a bit of wine at dinner. When I got out of the car, he suddenly held my wrist lightly. Celia. He pulled me in front of him with a slight force. He had a rich scent of wine on him. Being so close, the bitter fragrance of ebony and cedar instantly enveloped me. Unlike Paul's arrogant young master demeanor, Otis had a unique scent that belonged to a mature man. I was momentarily dazed. Until he lowered his head, and a light kiss fell on my lips. Get some rest. I'll take you to the airport tomorrow. As he spoke, he reached out and gently rubbed my lips. When I was embarrassed and at a loss, he suddenly whispered in my ear. My Celia is really soft and fragrant. At 7 o'clock in the evening, all the friends had arrived. There was an empty seat next to Paul. He didn't bring a date. The friends all knew. That seat was reserved for Celia. After all this time, they could tell. Paul still liked Celia. He was just too proud, always wanting others to bow down to him. After tonight, you two should stop this. When Celia arrives, you should coax her and apologize to her sincerely. Paul glanced casually at the door. I won't coax her. It's already good enough that I gave her a step down. You're just being difficult. It's already this late, why isn't Celia here yet? Did you tell her, Paul? He checked his watch, who cares if she comes or not? I'll go out and check. Paul didn't stop him. He stood up and walked to the window. It was already getting dark outside, and he looked downstairs. Cars were coming and going, but he didn't know if the one he was waiting for was there. Paul suddenly remembered his birthday last year. At that time, he and Celia were in a good relationship. She gave him a belt and cufflinks, which he used almost every day. And the diamond earrings he gave her on her birthday. She used to wear them every day too. But that day, she left them in the apartment and didn't take them. Paul didn't know why, but his heart felt a bit heavy. At this moment, the door of the room was suddenly pushed open, and someone shouted happily, "Paul, she's here!" He turned around abruptly, feeling the gloom in his heart instantly dissipate. Paul knew very well how much Celia liked him. He knew she would definitely come tonight. As long as she came, this time he would willingly bow down and coax her. Paul leaned against the windowsill, still in that leisurely and casual posture. He seemed completely indifferent to who might come in. There wasn't a hint of expectation in his heart. But his arm resting on the windowsill was tense. His fingers, at some point, had clenched tightly. A super big surprise, coming right up. The person who entered was full of excitement, and the atmosphere became lively. Paul's lips seemed to carry a faint smile. He lowered his eyes and said nonchalantly, "It's the same old routine every year, what surprise could there be? This time it's really different." Paul's face showed no emotion. But ripples began to form in his heart. What kind of surprise would Celia give him? His friends were right. He had indeed gone too far. That day, for some unknown reason, he lost his head and kissed another girl right in front of her. But he regretted it immediately after kissing the junior. If Celia had shed a single tear then, he would have apologized and begged for forgiveness right away. But she didn't. She just calmly left. During this period, he had been quite reckless, constantly changing female companions. Celia must have been very hurt. But even so, she still put her heart into preparing a birthday surprise for him. A thought suddenly arose in Paul's mind. That's it has to be her. He would put away his usual careless attitude and seriously date Celia. A friend walked over, nudged him lightly, and whispered, "Stop putting on airs." Paul surprisingly dropped his arrogance and responded with a light The friend was a bit surprised. "You really know you were wrong?" Paul smiled, "I really know. My God, this is a rare sight. The previous things were indeed my own fault." Paul said, looking at his friend with utmost seriousness. "I've made up my mind. From now on, I'll settle down and be with Celia properly. I won't make her angry anymore." The friend looked gratified. "It's about time. Celia will definitely be overjoyed." "It's not too late now," Paul had just finished speaking, when two waiters pushed a huge pink paper box tied with ribbons into the room. Paul was a bit stunned. The friend laughed and pushed him forward. "Hurry up and see what surprise Celia has prepared for you." His heart began to beat faster. Yet he felt inexplicably nervous. Clearly, he was a playboy who had seen all sorts of situations. But now, his palms were sweating from the tension. Would Celia be inside? So, the surprise she prepared was to present herself to him? Paul's mind was in a mess. He had been dating Celia for more than 2 years. This year, as she prepared for her postgraduate exams, she would occasionally stay overnight at his off-campus apartment when she studied too late. But they had not taken the final step. In fact, he had been dissatisfied about this. Most of their arguments were because of this reason. He still remembered the worst fight they had. Celia cried her heart out. And he didn't even want to comfort her. His mind was filled with frustration and unmet desires. It was only now that Paul belatedly realized. Celia had no mother, and her father had remarried and had a new family and children, leaving her neglected. If he really cared for her, loved her, he would consider her insecurities. Give her promises, give her a status, make her feel secure. Paul suddenly changed his mind. Why not tonight? He would propose to her. As he thought this, his originally wildly beating heart suddenly calmed down. His friends surrounded him, pushing him towards a huge pink cardboard box. He reached out and pulled the ribbon that tied the bow. The lid of the box immediately opened, and colorful heart-shaped balloons floated out. A girl wearing a pink strappy top and a matching short skirt also jumped out among the floating balloons, cheerfully shouting at him, "Paul, surprise!" A fragrant breeze hit him, and a soft, graceful body jumped into his arms, hugging his neck tightly. Then, she hung onto him completely. Before Paul could react, the girl kissed him hard on the face. "Happy birthday, Paul! Are you surprised, are you?" The girl looked up at him with a beautiful face full of joy. Paul stood motionless. He just stared fixedly at the girl in his arms. For a moment, he was confused and dazed. When did Celia become so proactive and enthusiastic? When did Celia's face become so unfamiliar, so annoying? For a full 30 seconds. He gradually came back to his senses. When the girl stood on tiptoe to kiss him again, he suddenly raised his hand and pushed her away forcefully. "Paul!" The girl almost fell, stomping her feet in grievance. The dazzling light fell on her face. Fell on her ears. 2 diamonds sparkled with an incredibly dazzling light. It instantly stung Paul's eyes. He stepped forward and grabbed the girl's arm, his handsome face even a bit twisted. "Who told you to wear these earrings? Who allowed you to wear them?" The girl was frightened, her face turning pale. "You said they were an eyesore and told me to throw them away. But I thought they were beautiful, so I couldn't bear to throw them away." "Take them off!" The girl was stunned and hadn't reacted yet. Paul looked at her coldly, his grip gradually tightening. "Are you going to take them off yourself, or do I have to do it?" The room was deathly silent, only the girl's gradually uncontrollable sobs could be heard. She tremblingly took off the earrings and threw them at Paul. Crying as she shouted at him, "Paul Bailey, I want to break up with you." "Break up?" Paul tightly clenched the earrings, laughing. "Did I ever date you? Did I ever say you were my girlfriend?" The girl was stunned, tears streaming down her face. "But you went on dates with me, took me home, you kissed me and hugged me." "So what?" Paul laughed cruelly. "I've kissed many girls. Does that mean they're all my girlfriends?" "Paul Bailey, you're a bastard." "That's right, I am a bastard. So now, can you get lost?" In Paul's tightly clenched hand, blood slowly oozed out. The earrings had pierced his palm, but he held on tightly, refusing to let go. The pain made him gradually sober. Celia wouldn't come to celebrate his birthday anymore. And he, ridiculously, was waiting for her to come. Waiting for her to bring a birthday surprise. The long flight finally ended. When we arrived in the foreign country, it was dusk. Back home, it should have been around 3 or 4 in the morning. As soon as I turned on my phone, a flood of messages poured in. It took a while for my phone to calm down. I casually opened it, and almost all the messages were from Paul, along with missed call notifications. I frowned, feeling quite surprised. Paul had never been like this before. During our Cold Wars in the past, if I didn't give in, he would never take the initiative to contact me. Oh, he did take the initiative once, but it was just to embarrass me in public. Thinking back to that night now, it feels as distant as a past life. I smiled and brushed off those unpleasant memories. Suddenly, my phone started vibrating and ringing again. It was still Paul calling. I didn't answer, so he called a second time. Paul and I didn't have deep-seated hatred. The Bailey family and my 2 uncles had close business dealings. I never intended to cut ties with Paul completely. I just wanted to return to a peaceful, non-interfering relationship. But now it seems that he doesn't think the same way. And I am already engaged. I should maintain an appropriate distance from other men. I hung up the phone and promptly deleted and blocked his number. Moments later, a call from a friend came through. I still didn't answer. My friend quickly sent a message. "Celia, please answer the phone, okay? It was Paul's birthday yesterday, you didn't come, he drank all night, and now he's in the hospital getting in for. We can all see that he really regrets it this time. Celia, please give him another chance." I clutched my phone. Not far away, the car Otis arranged to pick me up was waiting. I thought of the hug Otis gave me before I left. A warm feeling filled my heart. He said he would fly to see me every month. He also said that I should focus on my studies and he would patiently wait for me to finish. He promised that I wouldn't hear any scandalous news about him while I was abroad. Thinking of Otis always brings a strange sense of peace. No more anxiety. I thought for a moment, then replied to my friend's message. "We've already broken up. Please don't tell me about him anymore. Thank you." After replying, I locked the screen and put my phone in my bag. The person Otis arranged came over to help me with my luggage. The driver opened the car door for me and spoke respectfully. "Miss Celia, Mr. Weston has arranged everything." Now, let's take you home. The car drove through the streets of the foreign country. I looked curiously at the street scenes outside the window. Everything was new and full of hope. Suddenly, I felt a sense of anticipation for the new life that was about to begin. After I replied to my friend's message that day, Paul indeed never called or sent a message again. And I quickly forgot everything about him. I threw myself wholeheartedly into my new study life. A month later, Otis came to see me abroad as promised. For some reason, even though it was only a month, when we met again, I felt inexplicably shy. Clearly, when he sent me off at the airport, he hugged me and kissed me. But now, seeing him again, I felt too shy to even look at him. As dinner was about to start, Otis suddenly stood up and moved from his seat opposite me to the chair next to me. I instantly tensed up. I sat properly, with my back straight and hands on my knees, like an obedient student. Celia. Otis gently held my hand. My palm was hot and sweaty. But he held it tightly. Why are you afraid of me again after just a month? I couldn't answer. It was a strange, subtle feeling, hard to describe. Should I come twice a month from now on? I suddenly turned to look at him. But as soon as I turned my face, Otis lowered his head and kissed me. Celia, I missed you a lot this month. His voice was low and slightly hoarse as our lips touched. I instinctively tried to pull away, but he held my waist, not allowing me to move. The kiss wasn't deep. Like the previous few times, it didn't make me feel uncomfortable or abrupt. Instead, a sense of joy swelled in my heart, making it hard to breathe. It felt like a little silver spoon stirring honey water with crushed ice in my heart. Sweetness spread out, rippling like waves. I didn't realize when I had tightly gripped his sleeve, creating deep creases. Not until the waiter came did Otis stop the kiss. My face was hot and burning, surely bright red. But in the following interactions with him, I no longer felt shy or nervous. Once, after drinking a bit of red wine, I even boldly joked with him. Otis, I feel very comfortable and at ease with you. How so? I propped my chin with one hand, looking at him for a while, then suddenly giggled. It's like being with my uncles. Very relaxed, very comfortable, like I'm still a child. He raised an eyebrow slightly. You are still a child. Celia, at your age, you should be carefree and unrestrained. He said, patting my head, from now on, just continue being a child. At least, when you're with me, you can always be like this. Why? I looked at him blankly, asking the question again. Why me? Why get engaged to me? Why be so good to me? After my mother passed away, I understood one thing. Many people in this world prioritize their own interests. No matter what they do, they first consider if it benefits them. But I carefully thought it over in my heart. Besides the inheritance my mother left me, there wasn't anything about me worth scheming for. And that inheritance was nothing to Otis. Celia, on the day we get married, I'll tell you. He kissed my forehead and helped me with my scarf. Celia, you're drunk. We should go home. All right, Otis, let's go home. It was the third day since Otis returned to the country. I had just come out of the library when I saw Paul. The morning mist had cleared, and the sun hung in the sky, but it was still cold. I was wearing a coat and a scarf, yet I still felt the chill everywhere. But Paul stood under the tree, wearing only a thin windbreaker. He seemed to have lost some weight. Maybe it was due to the long flight, he looked a bit weary. But he was still striking and dazzling. Even in a foreign and unfamiliar campus, he still attracted the attention of passers-by. I paused for a moment, hugged my books, and continued walking. When I walked past him, I didn't lift my head or look at him. But he called out to me, Celia. He took a step forward and blocked my way. I didn't know how long he had been standing there. The mist had dampened his hair and eyes. I've been looking for you for a long time. I smiled. What's up? I forgive you. But why did you suddenly decide to study abroad? Why didn't you even tell me? If it's because of that truth or dare kiss, Celia, I can apologize to you. Paul grabbed my arm. I stepped back and pulled my hand away. It's all in the past. And I haven't cared about it for a long time. He frowned slightly. Then why did you go abroad to study? This is my own choice. He looked at me, his frown deepening. All right, going abroad is a done deal, and it can't be changed. At worst, I'll just fly over a few more times. I was a bit surprised. Fly over a few more times? I'm a man, of course it's on me to make the effort to fly over to see you. Wait. I interrupted him. Paul Bailey, you don't need to fly over to see me. You're not obliged to, and I don't need it. Celia, so you're still mad, right? Since you're still mad and care about it, why did you just say it's all in the past? I almost laughed out of anger. Paul, do I have to spell it out for you? I said it's all in the past because I don't care about that kiss, and I don't care about you anymore, understand? What do you mean? We broke up a long time ago. I looked at him calmly. Mr. Bailey, do you understand now? I don't know if Paul was too arrogant and proud, or if I didn't make myself clear enough. He didn't go back to the country. Instead, he waited for me at school every day. At first, I ignored him, treating him like he was invisible. But in just a few days, rumors started spreading around the school. Many people were saying that I had a very handsome boyfriend. I was afraid that if the rumors spread too far, they would reach Otis. It would upset him. After much consideration, I decided to talk things over with Paul. But before I could say anything, he took out a ring. Celia, I know what you're thinking. You just want to get married, to have a sense of security, right? He grabbed my hand, trying to put the ring on my finger. Let's get engaged first, and you can decide when to get the marriage certificate. Will that do? I forcefully pulled my hand back, and the ring fell onto the table. The diamond was large and shining brightly. I won't deny that when I liked him the most, I had fantasized about this day. But after countless cold wars, countless arguments about whether to sleep together or not, countless times I felt jealous and sad because of other girls. And finally, when I saw him kiss that junior with my own eyes, my feelings and expectations for him had long vanished. Paul, I came here just to tell you one more time. We've broken up. Go back, and don't come looking for me anymore. He suddenly got angry. Celia, you've been causing a scene for so long, isn't it enough? I won't force you to do anything you don't want to anymore. I'll agree to marry you. What more do you want? I'm already engaged. I looked at him calmly. So please, don't pester me anymore, okay? He stared at me for a long time, then suddenly laughed. Stop joking, Celia. Who are you engaged to? Who could you possibly be engaged to? We just had a fight and a few days of Cold War, and you randomly got engaged to someone? He looked at me. When did you become so casual? Believe it or not, I've said everything I needed to say. If you continue to pester me at school, I'll call the police. After saying that, I took my bag and turned to leave. But he grabbed my wrist. Celia, then tell me, who are you engaged to? He tightened his grip, making me stumble a bit. We dated for 2 years. Even if we broke up, and you found someone new, I should still check him out for you, right? There's no need. Is it that there's no need, or you don't actually have a fiancé? All right, you've learned all my tricks, and you want to make me jealous, right? I really thought he was sick, and not just a little sick. Paul Bailey, I'm not as childish as you. Then tell me who your fiancé is. You really want to know? Of course. My ex-girlfriend is engaged. How could I not be curious? I pointed to a business magazine on the newspaper rack not far away. The person on the cover was Otis. It's him. Paul followed my finger and looked, then laughed. Celia, at least make up a more believable story. That's Otis Weston. Even my dad has to bow to him. I said it's him, believe it or not. His expression relaxed, and his smile deepened. All right, stop messing around, Celia. Let's reconcile and be like before, okay? I looked at him helplessly, feeling that explaining further would only be more ridiculous. So I simply stopped talking and turned to walk away. He was about to chase after me. But his phone suddenly rang. After a few words, his expression changed, and he hurriedly got into his car and left. I didn't understand but felt greatly relieved. After Paul left, those rumors quickly disappeared. Otis continued to call and video chat with me as usual, with no changes at all. Only then did I completely relax. It seemed that these jokes hadn't reached his ears. Months passed by. Otis maintained a routine of flying over twice a month without interruption. Since Paul came to find me that one time, he never came again. He did call me using a friend's phone once. But every time I heard his voice, I hung up immediately. When spring arrived, my birthday was approaching. Because I missed my two uncles very much, I followed Otis back to the country. At the family dinner that day, Otis suddenly mentioned to my uncles that he wanted to get a marriage certificate with me. I was a bit surprised, but my uncles were very happy. I didn't have any resistance in my heart, and I seemed to be very happy as well. The matter of getting the marriage certificate was set for my birthday. The wedding preparations also began to start slowly. The night before getting the certificate, I arranged a gathering with my best girlfriends. Otis said that I could have fun with my good friends all night long before getting married. After getting the certificate tomorrow, I wouldn't be allowed to stay out all night. That night, when we were having dinner, we happened to run into friends from Paul's circle. After dinner, when my friends and I went to that viral trendy nightclub. Just as we got out of the car, I saw Paul. He was leaning against a car, staring at me intently. The early spring wind in the capital was still very cold. I shrank my neck and pulled my coat tighter. Without looking at him, I walked straight inside. Paul didn't stop me either. My friends and I didn't really like such noisy places. So after a short while, we were ready to leave, looking for a quiet club to drink tea and chat. But just as I stood up, Paul called out to me, "Celia, since you're back, don't go abroad anymore." I felt it was unbelievable and inexplicable. I bypassed him and was about to leave. But Paul blocked me again. I didn't throw away these earrings. He opened his palm, and the diamond earrings still shone brightly. When I received this birthday gift, I was very happy but also faintly disappointed. Yet I wore them every day, never taking them off. But when I decided to let go completely, I left these earrings in his apartment and didn't take them with me. I've thought a lot these days. It's not wrong that you didn't want to have sex before marriage. It wasn't wrong that you didn't want to give in during our last Cold War. I shouldn't have deliberately provoked you and made you angry. But Celia, the premise of all this is because I still love you, I still care about you. Paul pointed to his tie and showed me the cufflinks. Look, the things you gave me, I use them every day. Celia, we've been together for 2 years, not 2 days, not 2 months. I know you can't bear to part with me, right? I was really fed up with his rhetoric. And I knew very well. He was just too smooth sailing, too high and mighty. He never had anything he wanted that he couldn't get. And he never had, got and then lost. So he was unwilling, stubbornly entangled. To say his love and cared seemed too cheap. But I'm getting the certificate tomorrow. Paul, you should look forward too. Celia. You can be angry, and you can get engaged because of anger. But marriage is not a trivial matter. Don't ruin your life because of being angry with me. I pushed his hand away heavily. Paul, you are not that important. You haven't been important for a long time. I seriously looked at him for the last time. Paul Bailey, I won't joke about my lifelong happiness for someone who has long ceased to be important. It seemed to be the first time I saw such an expression on Paul's face. He was always high and mighty, indifferent and relaxed about everything. Even when I cried and said I wanted to break up. At most, he would frown and smoke irritably. But now he stood there motionless. The usually flirtatious and affectionate eyes seemed completely silent. Whether he was in pain or sadness, how long he would be in pain or sadness. It had nothing to do with me anymore. The day Otis and I got our marriage certificate, we went back to our new home together. Some things happened naturally, as if they were meant to be. My uncles were very supportive of my marriage to Otis. Otis followed all the traditional procedures meticulously and seriously. Because of his sincerity and care, my uncles went from being worried and uneasy to feeling reassured and accepting. It was then that I learned. After my mother passed away, my father wanted to remarry. The reason I was able to inherit the estate so smoothly was because of Otis's help behind the scenes. Without him, my two uncles alone would have had a hard time dealing with all the obstacles. The house was very warm with the heating on, while Otis was blow-drying my hair. I didn't know if it was because we were too close or because the warm air was too hot. I felt a slight sweat on my back, and my face gradually turned red. Otis, can you tell me why now? He turned off the blow-dryer and leaned in to whisper in my ear with a smile, I'll tell you after our wedding night. Otis! I glared at him through the mirror. After our wedding night, it will be too late for me to regret it. Do you still want to regret it? If you can't give me a satisfactory answer. My voice grew smaller as I spoke. Because Otis had already wrapped his arms around my waist from behind and kissed me deeply. This kiss was different from the previous gentle and tender ones. It was overwhelmingly strong and astonishingly deep. I felt like all the oxygen in my body was being taken away. My tongue was numb from his kiss, and my legs were so weak that I could barely stand. Otis simply picked me up and placed me on the dressing table. He spread my legs apart and brushed my messy hair away from my ear. When he kissed my earlobe, my whole body trembled. A shiver ran down my neck, as if I had been electrocuted. But his warm hands held me tightly. What do you want, Celia? Do you want to call off the wedding? Or do you want to sneak away? He spoke as he kissed the most sensitive part of my neck. I pushed against his chest, trying to avoid him, but there was nowhere to hide. In the end, he lowered his head and kissed my slightly swollen lips again. Do you remember I told you that I was afraid of scaring you? Yes. I responded vaguely, but as soon as I opened my mouth, he took the opportunity to kiss me even deeper. I couldn't help but grab his robe tightly, my whole body trembling. When I first saw you, you were only 16. 16, my mother was still alive then. I stared at him in a daze, and suddenly my eyes turned red. He held me in his arms, gently stroking my back. At that time, you were not yet an adult, I could only wait. Later, when your mother passed away, you were still not 18. I remember now. You came to my mother's funeral too. I lay on his chest, tears streaming down my face. You told me to take care and not cry too much. You grew up, became an adult, but the timing was still not right. Celia, I still had to wait. Otis cupped my face, wiping away my tears bit by bit. It was then that I remembered, my uncles did occasionally mention setting me up on blind dates. But at that time, I had just lost my mother and was still young. I had no interest in such things. I just didn't expect that when you went to college, you would fall for another man. I had some despicable and dirty thoughts of taking you away. But seeing you happy with him, I gave up on that idea. For 2 whole years, Celia, I had never been so tormented. Otis lowered his eyes to look at me. His fingers traced over my eyebrows, my eyes, every inch of my face. Until finally, they rested at the corners of my eyes where tears were flowing. Don't cry, Celia. Otis, so you said you were afraid of scaring me. Because you liked me since I was 16? He didn't answer. The truth was far more complicated than that. But he couldn't bring himself to tell Celia about those secret and unspoken feelings. She had appeared in his dreams countless times. And in those dreams, he had done many excessive things to her. But now, the dream had come true. She was really in his arms. Yes, I once despised myself for being so despicable. I even secretly consulted a psychologist. But isn't it normal for teenagers to have a crush and secretly date? But I'm 6 years older than you, Celia. At her age, she might have only fantasized about pure love. But at his age, he already had an overwhelming desire to possess the girl he liked. I looked at him with some frustration. Yes, you are 6 years older than me. My best friend said that men start to go downhill after 25, and you are already 28. But before I could finish my sentence, Otis suddenly picked me up. The world spun around, and my body sank into the soft big bed. I was enveloped and swallowed by his firm, hot body. Celia, seeing is believing. You should see for yourself, touch, feel, and then draw your conclusions. He guided my hand downwards. I suddenly opened my eyes wide, staring at him. Otis. He seemed pleased by my expression. What about a 28-year-old man? I tried to pull my hand back, but he held it tighter. He lowered his body, his hot kisses falling on my lips again. Celia, don't cry later. Even if you cry, I won't be soft-hearted. But he still softened his heart for me. Just like at my mother's funeral. I cried my heart out, and he softened completely. And now, I just shed a single tear under him, with red eyes. He stopped, held me in his arms, and comforted me for a long, long time. That night was very long, as if the sky would never brighten. But the next day was very short. Because when I opened my eyes, it was already afternoon. And the moment I opened my eyes, Otis lowered his head and kissed me. It's time to get up. If you don't, your uncles will be upset. I closed my eyes and smiled, reaching out for a hug. He bent down and picked me up. My Celia is so soft and fragrant. Do you like it? I looked at him boldly, but then quickly gave in, burying my face in his chest. Otis held me, walking steadily towards the bathroom. After a while, he finally answered. I like it. I like it very much. He had always liked it. He had liked it for a long, long time. When I had no idea. When I was either in pain or joy. There was someone who cared about my every emotion. I don't know what the future holds, but at this moment, right now, I feel incredibly happy and content. On the day Otis and I held our wedding, Paul's parents came. But Paul didn't come. When I saw Mr. and Mrs. Bailey, both of them were a little awkward. But I didn't let the grievances between Paul and me affect the elders. After all, during the time we were dating, they were quite polite to me. Even though I knew they were not very satisfied with me. However, Otis's attitude was somewhat cold. Both of them looked a bit uneasy. Paul had said before that his father had to bow his head in front of Otis. Indeed, the Bailey family was not as prosperous as before. Now they were even more in decline. If they offended Otis, they would probably fall even further in the future. I looked at Mrs. Bailey's anxious and uneasy eyes. Thinking back to when my mother passed away, she also came to pay her respects. She once held me in her arms with heartache and shed tears. I couldn't help but gently tug Otis's sleeve. Only then did his expression soften a bit, and he had someone accept the gifts sent by the elderly couple. In the middle of changing my dress, I received a text message from an unknown number on my phone. Celia, happy wedding. I knew it was Paul. After thinking for a moment, I still replied with 2 words, thank you. After a while, that number sent another message. If that day during the dare, I had kissed you, would we not have broken up? I didn't reply again and deleted and blocked that unknown number. There are no ifs in this world. And I am immensely grateful and thankful for his absurdity that day. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have become disheartened and decided to go abroad. Agreed to meet Otis. I wouldn't have known what it feels like to be loved wholeheartedly. Celia, have you finished changing? Otis pushed the door open and came in. I turned around to look at him, smiling brightly. Yes, I'm ready.